Are you someone who has been questioning their gears for not that sharp images? Or are you someone who isn't very happy with the image quality? Well, you have landed on the right video, because high chances are that there is nothing wrong with your gear but everything wrong with your shooting technique. I'm Arzu Khurana, a wildlife photographer, and I am here to help you get better and sharper images with the gear that you already own. Most of the unsharp images are a result of three things. First, incorrect shutter speed. It is often believed that the right shutter speed to get rid of the camera shake is 1/250. Please don't take it as a straitjacket formula. In most of the situations, especially in wildlife photography, this does not work. We have this tendency to find a formula and stick to it. So don't think that there's any particular shutter speed that will work in all situations. You need to understand a couple of things. Unsharp images can result from both camera shake and motion blur. To get rid of the camera shake, try and start with at least one bifocal length. Example, if you are shooting on a 400mm lens, you need to start with 1/400. If light is good, try and keep it either 1 bifocal length into 2 or 1 bifocal length into 3 even. Because in wildlife photography, you need to take into account the heavy lenses and the shake that comes with them. Here you will consider the effective focal length, as in, if you are using a 1.4 TC or the inside crop factor of your camera, then take it into account. Let's say if you are shooting with a 400mm with 1.4 TC, your shutter speed won't be 1/400 into 2 then. It should be 1/560 into 2, which is your effective focal length in this case, and the shutter speed would come somewhere around 1/1200. The other thing is motion blur. A lot of times you are trying to freeze motion in wildlife, be it flying birds or a walking tiger. However, same shutter speed can result in razor-sharp images of a walking mammal and a blur image of a bird. All subjects have different speeds of movement, so you cannot stick to a particular range of shutter speed to get all of them sharp. You need to adjust your shutter speed as per the speed of your subject. In fact, you cannot stick to one shutter speed for all the birds. A flying egret can come out sharp on, let's say, 1/1000. But a flying kingfisher might even go blur on even 1/3200 because of the speed of movement of the bird. So understand if your subject is a fast moving subject or a slower one. Another mistake we often do is increasing the shutter speed to be on a safer side. In order to shoot on a higher shutter speed in low light, we keep on boosting the ISO. And there can be situations in which you don't even need that amount of shutter speed. Let's say a subject which is sitting still, we play safe and think that if the subject moves a little, we might end up in blur images. But in that moment, take a pause and think, do you need that amount of shutter speed? You can manage a very clean portrait of a subject on a shutter as low as 1/150, and that way you can shoot it on a lower level of ISO also. And we all know that with lower level of ISO, images can come out relatively very clean. In this scenario, you will obviously have to add some kind of a support, a beanbag or a tripod. Now, this is not the only problem associated with ISO. I have seen people shooting on a very low ISO when they actually need shutter speed. The camera these days, especially the high-end ones, can actually handle a very high level of ISO because of the powerful sensor. Hence, there is no harm in boosting the ISO if you need that amount of shutter speed, because a noisy image can be fixed in post, but a blur image, it's a waste of time. Improper focus. Now, this is because we fail to understand the AF area modes right. I won't be brand specific, but majorly we have single point focus, center focus, zone focus, and wide. Basically, the area modes help us to decide where the focusing plane lies. Remember this, more the precision required, smaller will be the AF area mode. At times, the subject is surrounded by a lot of clutter, and one of our focusing point falls on the little twig right in front of the subject. At times, the clutter is so tiny that we don't even see it in the field and end up realizing its presence only when we look at the images on a bigger screen. In all those cases, you need a single point focus and point it right on the eyes of the subject for a sharper image. Another case can be if the surroundings are clean but the subject is erratic. In that case, go for a wider AF area mode. That way, it will be easier for you to maintain focus on the subject. But wider AF area modes have their own problems, which reminds me of the third issue, incorrect aperture, correcting which can also help you to get better images on wider AF area modes. On wide AF area modes, you have to be a little careful because your camera can end up focusing on the other parts of the subject apart from the eyes, like the wings or the claws or whatever contrasty areas lie in the frame. At times, the grass in the foreground or the background too. And when this happens, the eyes will be blurred and the image will look bad and unsharp. To avoid this, you can consider stopping down the aperture a bit. That way, the depth of field will be more deep and the chances of getting a sharper subject would be high. Another problem can be that you are shooting on the widest aperture possible. Now, if you're in a fast lens, let's say a 400 f2.8, obviously the depth of field will be too shallow and the areas around the focusing plane will go blurred. If your subject is bigger in size, let's say an elephant or a tiger or this peacock even, you might consider stopping down the aperture for sharper images and better details. Also, if you're somebody who's using a budget lens like a Tamboran or a Sigma 150-600, you can achieve better results on f numbers like f7.1, f8, f9. So consider stopping down the aperture instead of opening them on their wider possible apertures. So these were the main issues that you might encounter in the field. Next time when you get blur images, remember this video and I can assure you that 80% of the times your problem will be solved. Now what do we do about the rest 20%? Watch further. Are you a fan of extenders? Check if you are using your extender on a cheap lens like a Tamboran or a Sigma. High-end zoom lenses like a 200 or a 600 might perform better, but due to stopping down the f number on the extenders, you might get a very slow shutter speed and hence the blur. Remember, point number 1. Another issue can be using cheap ND filters. Our lenses are dead expensive. They are made of high quality glass, but we compromise with the budget when it comes to ND filters. And hence those cheap ND filters might be a reason behind your unsharp images. So if you use filters for lens protection, use them when you're storing the lens and get rid of them at the time of shoot. Another tip is add a support. Be it a beanbag or a tripod, use them in low light. I understand the handling issues that come with heavy bean bags or the struggle of mounting the tripods, but it's nothing compared to the kind of images you can get in low light after adding them. Also, another thing, are you comparing the high quality images shot on high-end 5 lakh rupee cameras or lenses versus to a beginner 50,000 rupee camera or lens? That might be a mistake. Do not compare image quality where the comparison makes no sense. Right comparison would be comparing your cameras and lenses to the cameras and lenses that lie in the same range. And the last thing, for those who are fans of back button focusing, you need to keep it pressed while shooting. I have seen people pressing the back button, locking the focus and leaving it in the middle way before pressing the shutter button. That won't work. Your camera will lock the focus once you press the button, but the moment the distance between the camera and the subject changes, even a slight movement of the subject will end up in a blur image. Hence, keep pressing the AF on button when you're clicking the image. Thank you for watching the video, and you can post your comments in case of any questions related to wildlife, photography or wildlife photography, and you never know, my next video can come out of those questions itself.